What we're talking about today is a moderately complex SQL command that has actually two join on clauses and an order by clause that has two levels. And essentially we have three tables, virtual CD, book, and an author. And each author can have multiple books, and each book almost certainly will have multiple virtual CDs. So that in the virtual CD table we have a code value that identifies what the book is. And this code value is generally referred to as a foreign key. And the ID that identifies the book is usually referred to as a primary key. They actually don't have to be that way, but almost always are in relational databases. So you have a unique primary key of, say, 1 or 5 or whatever that identifies a specific book, and then you have the 1 or 5 in the foreign key field of the virtual CD table, so that you just need to have a number and you don't have to have the whole book title. Saves a lot of space in the database and is a good SQL programming practice. And the same way with books, you can have multiple books that have the same author, and they'd have a foreign key in the book that would be, say, 9 or 8, and this would relate to primary keys in the author table, where 8 is Ray Bradbury and 9 is Stephen King or whatever. So that you just need that code value in the book table in order to reference the author table and get the actual name of the author. And the way they looks like this, where we have select a.name as author name, b.name as book name, and so on. And then we have from virtual CD, which is a table name, as V. Join book as B on v.bookid equals b.bookid, where V is a foreign key and B is a primary key. And the relationship between those two is generally explained as the V would be the parent table and the B would be the child table. And you don't necessarily have that order. Like I reverse the order in the next one. I have a.authorid, which is the child table, equals to b.authorid, which is the parent table. And then finally we have v.dateWatched is not null. And then order by date watched descending, comma, time watched descending. And one of the concepts that used extensively in this is the concept of an alias. We have both field aliases and table aliases. And the field aliases are used within the MySql data reader object, since they make things unambiguous. If we look up here, we have a.name as author name, b.name as book name, and v.name as VCD name. And you notice in all three tables the field has the name of name. So this is entirely ambiguous. You wouldn't know which name you're referring to if you just referred to as name. So we have this alias that makes it unambiguous, and then we can refer to that in the data reader reference in the code. And then you have the alias table names that are used in the on clause of the join. For instance, join book as B, and then you have b.bookid and the reference. And one of the main things this does is it saves a lot of typing, because you don't have to type out the entire book name. And it's pretty standard conventional practice. And finally, an observation is the aliases are all specified as with the as keyword, whether they're table reference, table aliases, or field aliases. And in the two joins, we join the book table to the virtual CD table and the author table to the book table. And as I said previously, these generally connect a foreign key in table 1 to a primary key in table 2, where the primary key table is referred to as a child and the foreign key table is referred to as the parent. And these connected fields have to have identical values. In the case of all these, they're integers. So book ID and virtual CD table is an integer, and so is book ID and book table. And the same with the author ID in both the author table and the book table. And you notice that the date clause, the date watched, is referenced as is not null in the where clause. And you can't say less than greater than null, where less than greater than is the not equal in SQL, because you'll just get an error. You have to actually say is not null. And basically what's going on here is every time something is played, the date watched and time watched fields are updated so that item always has the latest date and time watched in those fields. But if they've never been watched, they're null. So basically this table only lists out things that have been watched. And it further wants to list these with the latest one first. So we use the DESC, or descending, to specify both on the date and time level that it's going from the highest to the lowest. So the most recent will be listed first. Well, if we look at the actual code, we have a function called display play history that has string values for all the fields, and we use our array of string prongs to get rid of the second half of the date field, the 12:0:0. And then we open a data reader based on this complex SQL and go through each of the records with a read and put them into a list view. And this has been described extensively in the previous video on this, 249. So if we compile and run this, we see we get the author from the author table, the spelled out English readable value, the book from the book table, and the virtual CD from the virtual CD table, and the date watched and time watched, with the most recent one being first and the least recent one being last. So this is created by the double order by clause, and the foreign key in virtual CD pulls up the book value in the book table with the join, and the foreign key in the book table pulls up the author with the join, so that everything's very readable, even though these are spread across three tables. Effectively, a join is a way of taking multiple small tables and creating one large table, at least temporarily, for the execution time. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.